Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andriy Sybiha, called on partners to impose sanctions against Russia for deliberately stalling peace negotiations. The minister announced this on his page on the social network X. With this call, the head of Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs summed up our country's official conclusions following the second meeting with the Russians in Istanbul. In particular, the minister noted that the Russian delegation still has not responded to the Ukrainian side's document, which outlined Ukraine's vision for ending the war. He also emphasized that instead of responding to Ukraine's constructive proposals, the Russian side put forward a set of old ultimatums that do not bring real peace any closer. According to him, this contradicts Russia's previous promises, which were made, among others, to the United States. Let us recall that on June 2, in Istanbul, Turkey, the second round of negotiations to end the Russian-Ukrainian war took place. As a result, the Ukrainian and Russian delegations agreed to exchange certain categories of prisoners according to the all-for-all formula and to exchange the bodies of those killed on the front lines according to the 6,000 for 6,000 formula. No more significant progress was achieved at the meeting. Moreover, for a temporary ceasefire, Russia continues to demand recognition of its protectorate over 4 Ukrainian regions and Crimea, and puts forward a number of other ultimatum-like demands, which are nothing less than Ukraine losing part of its sovereignty. For more details about the negotiations in Istanbul, watch our next report.
On June 20, the second round of negotiations between Russia and Ukraine took place in Istanbul. At the meeting, which remained uncertain until the very last moment, Moscow and Kyiv managed to agree on new humanitarian measures. But even a ceasefire, let alone a peace agreement, was once again not achieved. Ukraine and Russia agreed to focus on exchanges in the all-for-all format by categories: severely wounded, seriously ill, and young people aged 18 to 25. They also agreed to exchange 6,000 bodies of fallen soldiers each. Russia did not change its demands on Ukraine in the memorandum it handed over during the negotiations, Axios reports, citing sources. In the memorandum, Russia demands that Ukraine withdraw its troops from the regions that Moscow claims as its own. The journalists do not specify which territories are being referred to, but most likely it is about the 4 occupied regions of Ukraine. The Russians also propose to return 10 children stolen from Ukraine by July 10, according to 2 Ukrainian officials. But this is only a small fraction of the Ukrainian children being held in Russia. Officially, Ukraine has stated the figure of more than 19,000 abducted children. The Russian delegation rejects such numbers. This was stated by the head of the delegation, Vladimir Medinsky. Stop mentioning insane numbers. We will return everyone who is in Russia. There have been no abductions. Russian soldiers are not abducting anyone. They were only rescuing them because their lives were in danger. Don't put on a show for European sympathetic ladies who don't even have children themselves. Russia has stated that it offered Ukraine a ceasefire on several sections of the front. The head of the Russian delegation, Vladimir Medinsky, claims that this concerns a ceasefire on 2 or 3 sections of the front in order to collect the bodies of the dead. He also stated that Russia and Ukraine are organizing medical commissions to exchange severely wounded soldiers. The exchanges will be regular. The Turkish side, which is acting as a mediator, expressed hope that a trilateral meeting can be organized either in Istanbul or in Ankara.
Edar Herashchenko. On June 4th, at the initiative of the White House, the 4th phone conversation took place between the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the Russian dictator, Vladimir Putin. As the American president reported on his Truth Social page, their conversation lasted 1 hour and 15 minutes. The complete lack of response from the American leader to the actions of the Ukrainian armed forces and special services most likely indicates that the President of the United States is continuing his previous course regarding the Kremlin. For this, Donald Trump is being actively criticized both by European leaders and by his own allies in the United States. It appears that Putin's response regarding Ukraine may happen in the very near future. Therefore, it is necessary to remain extremely vigilant and be sure to respond to any warning signals. The special envoy of the U.S. President for Ukraine, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, stated in a June 3 interview with Fox News that Ukraine carried out, and I quote, a very bold attack against Russian military airfields. However, in his opinion, this significantly increases the risk of escalation in the conflict. If you attack a part of the enemy's national survival system, particularly its nuclear triad, this greatly increases your level of risk. You don't know what the other side will do next, the special envoy explained. Let me remind you that on Sunday, June 1, the Security Service of Ukraine carried out a unique and large-scale operation codenamed Web, thanks to which, by the most conservative estimates, between 15 and 34% of Russian strategic aviation was destroyed. According to the Security Service of Ukraine, preparation for the operation lasted more than 18 months. To achieve this, 117 FPV drones were transported into Russian territory using trucks equipped with mobile wooden structures that concealed the drones. The attack simultaneously targeted 4 key Russian military airfields: Belaya in Irkutsk region, Olenia in Murmansk region, Diaghilevo in Ryazan region, and Ivanovo in Ivanovo region. Among the destroyed and damaged aircraft are, in particular, the A-50, Tu-95, Tu-22M3, and Tu-160. The total losses for the aggressor country amount to $7 billion. However, most importantly, the Russian Federation has long since lost the ability to produce aircraft of this class. Therefore, the loss of each aircraft is irreparable for them. In addition, on June 3, the Security Service of Ukraine struck the Kerch Bridge for the 3rd time since the start of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine. One of the supports of the main span of the illegally constructed structure was blown up. The Security Service of Ukraine, in particular, stated that the bridge across the Kerch Strait is essentially in an emergency condition. In turn, the Ukrainian publication Defense Express notes that the Security Service of Ukraine shared a video of the moment of the explosion. Learn more about the real consequences of the work of Ukrainian special services deep behind enemy lines in our upcoming report.
Katerina Nova. On Sunday, June 1, the Security Service of Ukraine carried out a unique large-scale special operation codenamed Web to destroy enemy bombers. More than 40 Russian aircraft were hit by kamikaze drones at 4 airfields. For the first time, information appeared online about explosions near the Olenia airbase in Olenegorsk, Murmansk region in northern Russia. This is one of the most important Russian military airfields where strategic bombers are stationed, including Tu-22M3 nuclear weapon carriers. Later, it became known about an attack by swarms of kamikaze drones on 4 Russian military airfields in the Murmansk, Ryazan, Ivanovo, and Irkutsk regions. These are the Olenia, Diaghilevo, Ivanovo, and Belaya air bases. The last one is located more than 5,500 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. This is the first strike by Ukrainian drones on Siberian territory. As a result of the drone strikes, 41 aircraft were hit, including the A-50, Tu-95, Tu-22M3, and Tu-160. This was reported by Vasyl Malyuk, the head of the Security Service of Ukraine. The destruction of enemy bombers is a task set before us by the President of Ukraine, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief Volodymyr Zelensky. He personally oversaw the progress of the special operation prepared by the security service personnel. The enemy bombed our country from these aircraft almost every night, but today they have truly felt that retribution is inevitable. The Security Service of Ukraine is doing and will continue to do everything possible to protect Ukraine and stop Russian shelling, said Vasyl Malyuk. In the footage of the attack released online, you can see Tu-95 bombers burning at the Belaya air base. Among the Russian aircraft hit at the Ivanovo airfield, there may have been a Russian A-50 long-range radar detection and control aircraft, which is valued at $350 million. The total value of the damage inflicted on the aggressor state is estimated at $2 billion. Russian channels reported that the attacks on strategic airfields deep inside Russia were carried out using drones that took off directly from trucks parked near gas stations. Later, sources in the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, confirmed this information. At the right moment, the roofs of the vehicles were remotely opened and the drones flew out to strike the Russian bombers. Sources in the SBU emphasized that the people who took part in this historic special operation have long since been back in Ukraine. So if the Putin regime makes a show of arresting someone, it will just be another staged performance for their domestic audience. The operation was personally overseen by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, while the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Vasyl Malyuk, led the working team that prepared the web special operation for more than a year and a half. The office for the SBU special operation was located next to the FSB headquarters in one of Russia's regions, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky said. The office for our operation on Russian territory was situated directly next to the FSB headquarters in one of their regions. A total of 117 drones were used in the operation, and a corresponding number of drone operators were involved. 34% of the strategic cruise missile carriers at their home airfields were hit. Our people operated in various Russian regions across 3 time zones. And our people were withdrawn from Russian territory before the operation. Now they are safe, those who helped us, commented the President of Ukraine. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the attack using FPV drones on military airfields in 5 regions. The agency blamed the attack on the Kiev regime. Airfields in the Murmansk, Irkutsk, Ivanovo, Ryazan and Amur regions came under attack. In 3 of them, the attacks were reportedly repelled. In the Murmansk and Irkutsk regions, as a result of FPV drones being launched from areas in close proximity to the airfields, several pieces of aircraft equipment caught fire. The fires have been extinguished. There were no casualties among military personnel or civilian staff, according to a statement from the Russian Ministry of Defense. On June 5, the Ukrainian Defense Forces, in coordination with the Security Service of Ukraine, carried out a missile strike on Russian Iskander installations in the settlement of Klinsy-Bryansk region. As a result of the effective actions of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, 1 Iskander launcher was destroyed and 2 were damaged. It is reported that these Russian missile systems were preparing to launch a strike, most likely targeting the Ukrainian capital. However, thanks to the effective work of the Ukrainian defenders, the strike never took place.
Intelligence from NATO member countries suggests that Russia is not planning a major offensive in either the Sumy or Dnipropetrovsk regions of Ukraine. This was stated on June 4th by a representative of the NATO leadership during a meeting with journalists from European Pravda in Brussels. The unnamed senior NATO official explained that the alliance's intelligence is currently monitoring all actions of the Russian Federation regarding the buildup of troops near the border with the Sumy region very closely. We are seeing the front line expanding to the north and northeast of Sumy. But there is no evidence that Russia is currently preparing a major offensive in the Sumy direction, he stated. The source also told Ukrainian journalists that he does not expect the Russian attacks in Donetsk region, which have almost reached the administrative border of the Dnipropetrovsk region, to turn into a large-scale offensive on Dnipropetrovsk. Meanwhile, the Russian invaders continue their attacks on at least 10 sections of the front. This is stated in the report of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Meanwhile, the soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine are inflicting significant losses on the occupying troops in manpower and equipment, and are also actively undermining the enemy's offensive potential in the rear. Also this week saw a number of appointments of new commanders of the joint forces, the air assault forces, and the unmanned systems forces of the armed forces of Ukraine. The ground forces are next in line, according to Ukraine's Minister of Defense, Rustem Umerov. Thus, Mikhailo Drapachi was appointed as the commander of the joint forces, and Ole Apostol was appointed as the commander of the air assault forces. Ihor Skibiuk was appointed deputy chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. There were also personnel changes in the command of the unmanned systems forces. Robert Brody Madyar was appointed as the new commander, while Vadim Sukharevsky became the deputy commander of the Operational Command East. In addition, Rustem Umerov announced that a person will soon be appointed in the ground forces who will focus exclusively on fourth generation issues, namely recruitment, mobilization, military training, and the implementation of new approaches in these processes. According to the Minister of Defense, all these changes have one goal: to strengthen the soldiers on the front line and provide them with everything necessary for effective combat against the enemy. Learn more about the current situation at the front in our upcoming report.
Russian troops are trying to expand their directions of advance in the Sumy region using small infantry assault groups, stated Andriy Demchenko, spokesperson for the State Border Guard Service. In the direction of the Sumy region, the enemy continues to use the tactic of deploying small infantry assault groups that attempt to enter in order to expand the combat zone on Ukrainian territory. The enemy does not use armored vehicles here, only infantry groups, which periodically use quad bikes and motorcycles to ensure rapid movement deeper into our country's territory to secure positions and wait for reinforcements, Demchenko said. According to Deep State, from May 22 to June 2, 121.5 square kilometers have been occupied in the Sumy region. The situation in the north of the Sumy region continues to worsen due to constant enemy pressure and a large number of infantry. Our fighters note that after an enemy concentration is struck, the enemy manages to quickly rush in with a new wave, and it is barely possible to keep up with destroying this horde, the report says. The status of several settlements that may potentially have already been captured is currently being clarified, namely Kindrativka, Vodolakhy and Oleksivka. On June 3, the Security Service of Ukraine blew up the Crimean Bridge underwater. Now the structure is in an emergency condition. This was reported by the Security Service of Ukraine. The operation lasted several months. In particular, SBU agents mined the supports of the overpass, which had been illegally constructed by Russia. As a result, on June 3, without any civilian casualties, the first explosive device was detonated at 4:44 a.m. The head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Lieutenant General Vasyl Malyuk, personally oversaw the operation and coordinated its planning. God loves the Trinity, and the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, always sees its plans through to the end and never repeats itself. Previously, we struck the Crimean Bridge twice, in 2022 and 2023, so today we continued this tradition, this time underwater. There is no place for any illegal Russian objects on the territory of our state. That is why the Crimean Bridge is an absolutely legitimate target, especially considering that the enemy used it as a logistical artery to supply its troops. Crimea is Ukraine, and any manifestations of occupation will receive our harsh response, Vasyl Malyuk emphasized. The underwater supports of the piers have been severely damaged at the seabed level. 1,100 kilograms of explosives in TNT equivalent contributed to this. In fact, the bridge is currently in an emergency condition. In the Pokrovsk direction, soldiers of the Spartan Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine used drones to stop Russian invaders who were assaulting defense positions on electric scooters. The brigade reported this on Facebook and published the corresponding video. The brigade noted that the Russians want to get closer to the defense forces' positions in the Pokrovsk direction at any cost, and recently have been trying to break through to the front line at high speed. The enemy's personnel and vehicles were destroyed. Specialists from the separate artillery reconnaissance brigade Chorny List destroyed a Russian Zoopark 1M reconnaissance and fire control radar complex on one of the key front lines in eastern Ukraine. This was reported by the Operational Strategic Group of Troops Khortytsia on Telegram, where they also published the corresponding video. Thanks to the skillful actions of the reconnaissance officers from the Chorny List Artillery Reconnaissance Brigade, they managed to detect and adjust a strike on the enemy radar system at the moment it was being deployed. The Zoopark 1M radar reconnaissance and fire control complex is a very valuable enemy target, the report says.
Last Wednesday, May 28, the Drone Summit 2025 Defense Innovation Summit was held for the first time in Riga, organized by the Ministry of Defense of Latvia. More than 1,000 experts, politicians, and representatives of the defense industry from nearly 20 countries around the world took part in the event. It was also announced during the summit that Turkey and Belgium have expressed their desire to join the international drone coalition led by Latvia and the United Kingdom, which supports Ukraine. In addition, the member countries of the drone coalition have pledged to provide Ukraine with 2.75 billion euros in 2025 to support the field of drone technologies. Our team also attended this undoubtedly important event for Ukraine and spoke with the participants present there. Details of the summit are in our exclusive report.
On May 28, the first International Drone Summit 2025 was held in Riga, organized by the Latvian Ministry of Defense. More than 1,000 experts, politicians, and representatives of the defense industry from 20 countries, including members of the drone coalition, took part in the event. During the summit, Latvian Defense Minister Andris Spruds announced the establishment of a center of competence for autonomous systems in the country, which will begin operations in the fall of 2025. The center will be engaged in the development and implementation of solutions in the field of drones and counter-drone technologies, as well as supporting the national armed forces and cooperating with Latvian technology companies. The international drone coalition is becoming stronger, which means we will be able to supply more and more drones to Ukraine, as well as strengthen the defense industry of Latvia, EU countries, and NATO. Our strength lies in unity, so the addition of new allies to the coalition will allow us to provide Ukraine with the much-needed support in its fight against the aggressor more effectively, Brooks said. Turkey and Belgium have expressed their desire to join the international drone coalition led by Latvia and the United Kingdom, which supports Ukraine. The coalition member countries have pledged to provide Ukraine with more than 2 billion euros in 2025 to support drone technology. As part of the summit, an exhibition was held where 100 companies from 16 countries showcased their latest unmanned technologies and innovations. Special attention was given to engaging young people. More than 50 young participants took part in hands-on drone engineering workshops, during which 30 drones were assembled to be delivered to Ukraine. Vadim Bartkov, marketing director of the company Deviro. The company specializes in the design, development, and production of unmanned aerial vehicles, as well as software for analyzing and processing the collected data. Vadim Bartkov himself shared more about the company's new development, the Bulava unmanned aerial vehicle.
If we talk about the development of technology in Ukraine in general, it has changed a lot over the past 3 years. And now we can already see that the true drone industry has taken shape in Ukraine. It has already reached certain heights. And its main advantage is that it's not just about having a technological edge. You also need to provide service, training, and everything else that goes with it. So now, let's say, we are producing very effective weapons, and these are strike weapons specifically for precision targeting. This is at the brigade level. Right behind you is our new one. And what kind of technology is this? This is a new generation of strike reconnaissance complexes. In other words, it's now a fully closed cycle. Previously, if we detected the enemy, we would transmit the coordinates and then strike with artillery. Now we no longer do that. Now we hunt the enemy. We hunt them thanks to our Bulava, and it carries out missions to strike 2 such formidable live targets.
The event concluded with a session of innovative idea presentations where international startups showcased their developments in the field of defense technologies.